Tonight, we journey back in time. You are Marcus Valerius, a Roman engineer tasked with building a grand aqueduct. So, go ahead and settle in. Find that perfect spot in your bed or your favorite chair. Let your shoulders fall and take a slow, deep breath. There is nothing else you need to do right now but rest. Where are you listening from this evening? And what time is it for you? Is the moon high in your sky? Or are you just finding a quiet moment before your own perfectly scheduled chaos begins again? Either way, you are welcome here. If you enjoy these journeys, a simple follow or subscribe helps others find this quiet place too. Now, let the stillness around you fade and listen for a new sound. Listen for the distant murmur of a bustling provincial town, a place whose citizens stop often for a drink of water. Your official assignment has just arrived, delivered by a messenger whose sandals are still dusty from the road. You are Marcus Valerius, and your reputation rests on a single monumental task: bringing fresh, life-giving water to the people. The rhythmic clatter of the carriage wheels over the hard-packed earth finally slows, the sound giving way to the low bleating of goats somewhere nearby. You step down onto the dusty ground, your legs stiff from the long journey from Rome. A fine, pale dust immediately settles on your dark traveling cloak, a fitting welcome to this parched provincial town. In your hand, you clutch a sealed scroll, the cylinders of wood at either end worn smooth from your nervous grip. This is it, the official commission for the Aqua Augusta. The weight of the parchment feels far greater than its physical form, heavy with the expectations of the Senate and the thirst of this townspeople. You are young, your mind filled with formulas and theories from the finest schools in the capital, but your hands are clean, untested. This project is your chance to prove that the lines and numbers you mastered on paper can be turned into enduring stone.
Following a guard through the town's main square, you notice the central fountain is dry, its stone basin stained and cracked. Children kick a dusty leather ball where water should be splashing, and the women gathered at the public well haul up buckets with a slowness that speaks of a deep and rationed supply. Every face you pass seems to hold the same question, the same weary hope. They know who you are. News of a Roman engineer travels faster than any courier. This visible, daily struggle sharpens the purpose in your mind. You are not just here to build a structure, you are here to bring life. The abstract challenge of gravity and gradient you studied for years now has a human face, and the responsibility feels immense, settling deep in your gut. The governor's residence is the largest building in the town, constructed of stone rather than the more common sun-baked brick. Inside, the air is still and cool, a welcome change that eases the tension in your shoulders. A servant leads you to a shaded courtyard and offers you a cup of water, which you accept gratefully. The silence stretches as you wait, and you understand it for what it is, a subtle display of power. He wants you to absorb the importance of this place, to feel like a visitor seeking a favor, not an expert arriving to provide a service. You pass the time by studying the mosaic floor, a simple geometric pattern that is elegant but not extravagant, much like the province itself. It reminds you that while Rome is the heart of the world, its strength comes from these vital, hard-working limbs. Finally, the provincial governor appears. He is an older man, his toga impeccably clean despite the pervasive dust of the town. His face is a network of fine lines, and his eyes, sharp and intelligent, take in every detail of your appearance, from your travel-worn boots to the expensive senatorial seal on your commission scroll. "Marcus Valerius," he says, his voice smooth but lacking real warmth. "Welcome. We have been expecting you." His polite words are a thin veil over a sharp, demanding scrutiny. He is not interested in your theories or your education from Rome. He is a man who deals in results, and you can feel him weighing you, judging whether you are capable of delivering them. This is not a partner in your grand project. He is your first and most powerful obstacle. He gestures for you to sit, making small talk about the rigors of your journey and the questionable quality of the local wine. "It is another problem we hope your water will solve," he says with a thin smile. "It is difficult to make good wine from thirsty grapes." The jest does not quite land, feeling more like another subtle reminder of the town's desperation and your duty to fix it. You respond with the practiced pleasantries your tutors drilled into you, trying to project a confidence that feels larger than your actual experience. You speak of Roman ingenuity and the emperor's generosity, boilerplate phrases that sound hollow even to your own ears. The governor simply nods, his gaze unwavering, letting your words hang in the quiet courtyard as if to see if they will hold their shape or simply dissolve. The pleasantries soon end, and you are led into a large, airy room dominated by a massive wooden table. The governor breaks the seal on your scroll and unrolls it with a loud crackle. The formal Latin text of your commission, granting you authority over men and materials for the construction of the Aqua Augusta, spreads across the dark wood. Seeing it laid bare, a legal instrument of immense power sends a fresh wave of nervous energy through you. This is the moment your life pivots from student to master builder. The governor reads it slowly, his finger tracing the lines of authority, before rolling it back up and setting it aside. He seems satisfied, not with you, but with the power vested in your office, a power he intends to direct. With the formalities concluded, he unrolls another set of parchments, the survey maps. They are beautifully drawn, showing the contours of the land, the distant line of the mountains, and the sprawling layout of the town you are here to save. The ink lines represent years of work for the surveyors who came before you, men who walked every pace of this land. From a wooden chest, the governor's aide produces a tool you recognize instantly. It is a groma, a simple but effective surveying device, consisting of a wooden cross with 4 weighted strings, or plumb lines, hanging from its ends. It is used for laying out perfect right angles, the very foundation of Roman roads, cities, and, of course, aqueducts. Holding the smooth, worn wood of the grama, you feel a connection to the men who used it before. You remember a heated debate with one of your instructors in Rome, a disagreement over whether a grama could truly maintain its accuracy over the many miles required for an aqueduct. Your instructor argued for more complex sighting tools, while you defended the simple genius of the proven method. A quirky detail often overlooked is how much Roman engineering relied on such simple tools, scaled up with immense manpower and meticulous repetition. You explain its function to the governor, perhaps a bit too eagerly, the words of your old classroom arguments spilling out. He listens patiently, but his eyes keep drifting back to the map, to the larger problem at hand. That problem becomes clear as he gestures for you to look closer. From your vantage point in his hilltop residence, you can see the faint blue-gray shape of the mountains on the horizon. There, he says, his voice lowering with gravity. That is our source, a clean, constant spring high in the hills. And here, he taps the cluster of buildings on the map, is our destination. The distance is not so great. The challenge is the land that lies between. He paints a stark picture of the town's plight. Wells running dry by summer's end, the risk of disease from stagnant water, and the brake on any further growth. The success of this province and his own career depends entirely on the channel of water you are tasked to create. He then traces two possible routes on the parchment with a hardened finger. The first is the northern route. It is a bold, straight line, an arrow shot directly from the mountain spring to the city gates. It is shorter, more efficient, a testament to Roman dominance over nature. This path is swift, the governor says, his tone approving of its directness. Then, his finger stops at a series of tightly clustered contour lines and a shaded area marked with a skull, a surveyor's warning. But it crosses the Agno Gorge here, and the hills on the far side are known for landslides. It is a great risk. He presents the danger as a mere footnote to the efficiency, a challenge for a truly ambitious engineer. Next, his finger moves to trace the second option, the southern route. This line is much longer, following the gentle, sweeping curve of a river valley. It avoids the deep gorge and the unstable hills entirely, staying on solid, predictable ground. This path is safer, he concedes, though the word sounds like an insult on his lips. It follows the land instead of conquering it. But it is nearly a third longer. It will require more time, more stone, more wages. It is the cautious choice. The way he says it leaves no doubt which option a man of vision, a true Roman, would choose. The pressure is immense. He is not just asking you to pick a route, but to declare what kind of man you are. You are left standing over the map, the silence of the room amplifying the frantic calculations in your mind. The northern route calls to the part of you that is young, bold, and desperate to make a name for yourself. A great bridge spanning a gorge would be a monument, a legacy etched into the landscape for centuries. It is the kind of project that gets an engineer noticed, the kind that leads to grander commissions in Rome itself. However, your training screams a different warning. You think of the fundamental principle of any aqueduct, the gradient. The gentle, almost imperceptible slope must be perfect. A single miscalculation, a single shift in the land could render the entire structure useless. The memory of your instructor's voice echoes in your head, counseling prudence and stability above all else. The southern route is less glorious, but it is more certain. It represents sound engineering, a commitment to function over form. To choose it would be to admit caution, perhaps even fear, in front of this shrewd governor. To choose the northern route would be a gamble, staking the entire project and your career on your ability to overcome a treacherous landscape. You feel torn between the man you want to be and the engineer you were trained to be. The two paths on the map are not just lines of ink. They are two different futures.
Finally, you make your decision. The debate inside you settles into a quiet resolve. Action is required. You reach for the cup of watered wine still sitting on the edge of the table, a small courtesy you had all but forgotten. Instead of drinking, you dip the tip of your index finger into the dark red liquid. Leaning over the map, the scent of parchment and old ink filling your senses, you press your finger to the starting point at the mountain spring. Then, slowly and deliberately, you trace the path you have chosen. The wet, crimson line stains the pale parchment, a stark and irreversible declaration. The governor watches, his expression unreadable, and gives a single sharp nod. The weight of that single damp line on the map settles into your bones, a promise of the river of stone you must now create. Summary. You, a young Roman engineer, have arrived in a dry provincial town with your first major commission, the Aqua Augusta. And after a tense meeting with the shrewd local governor, you have made the critical first decision by selecting one of two possible routes for the aqueduct. End state. The route for the aqueduct has been chosen, and the governor has implicitly approved your decision, setting the stage for the practical challenges of sourcing materials and surveying the land. With the governor's stamped approval of your chosen route now stored safely in your satchel, the abstract lines on the parchment map must become a physical reality. The theoretical challenge of the mountains and valleys is replaced by the immediate, practical need for raw materials. Your first task is sourcing stone, the very bones of the aqueduct. And this imperative takes you out of the governor's polished offices and into the countryside. The path you walk is uneven, and small stones shift under your sandals. You pause often, not from weariness, but to crouch and examine the land itself. The reddish soil is loose and crumbles easily between your fingers, leaving a fine powder on your skin that you wipe away on your tunic. This is the earth that will support your creation, and its softness plants a small seed of unease in your mind. This practical necessity brings you to a wide, sun-bleached field owned by a local magnate. He greets you with a smile that doesn't quite reach his eyes, which seem to constantly assess the quality of your clothing and the weight of the state coin purse at your belt. He gestures grandly to a nearby hillside, a raw wound of exposed rock where his slaves have been quarrying. "The finest stone in the province, engineer," he proclaims, his voice smooth and practiced. "Plentiful, close to your route, and available to you for a price that will make the governor believe you are a miracle worker with the public funds. The offer hangs in the still afternoon, tempting and convenient. Saving a large sum at this early stage would create a substantial reserve for the inevitable complications ahead. As the landlord continues to praise the virtues of his quarry, your foreman, a former legionary with a face like a worn map and hands scarred from 100 campaigns, approaches you. He stands a respectful distance away, silent until you acknowledge him. He doesn't speak against the landlord directly. Instead, he holds out his palm. On it sits a piece of stone from the man's quarry. You take it. The rock feels unnervingly light, and as you apply pressure with your thumb, small grains of it flake away, leaving a gritty residue. The foreman says nothing, but his silence is a clear warning, a testament of experience offered in place of words that might offend a powerful local. Because of this silent dissent, you find yourself at your first true crossroads of command. The landlord's words paint a picture of efficiency and thrift, a quick victory that would earn you immediate praise from your superiors in the province and back in Rome. His offer represents the easy path, one that smooths over logistical problems with a generous application of local coin. However, the foreman's quiet gesture is a heavy counterweight. His skepticism is not born from ambition or greed, but from a deep, practical knowledge of how things fail. He has seen siege engines shatter and fortress walls crumble, and he knows that grand designs are meaningless without a solid foundation.
You turn the gritty piece of stone over in your hand. Its rough texture a poor imitation of the solid, dependable rock used for the great works in Rome. Your mind travels back to a cool lecture hall, the scent of papyrus and oil lamps surrounding you. You can almost hear your old tutor, a stern Greek with a passion for engineering, his voice echoing as he drilled you and your fellow students on the principles of opus caementitium, the Roman concrete that binds the empire together. The mortar is the promise, he would say, tapping a diagram of a bridge, but the aggregate is the character. Weak stone, weak sand, and you are not building a monument. You are building a ruin for future generations to puzzle over. That memory clarifies the decision before you. The tutor's words cut through the landowner's persuasive speech. You look at the crumbling piece of rock in your hand, then at the distant mountains where certified Imperial quarries are known to exist. Getting stone from there would be a logistical nightmare, a slow train of heavy wagons that will consume time and money at a terrifying rate. It would strain your budget from the very beginning and force you to be frugal in other areas, perhaps with labor or tools. The governor, so pleased with your quick decision on the route, would surely question such a massive expenditure so early in the project. You are torn between the political wisdom of accepting the cheap offer and the engineering integrity your training demands. Pleasing the landowner and the governor now could make your life easier for months, ensuring local cooperation and a steady flow of resources. Yet the image of a future crack, a sagging arch, or a catastrophic failure born from this single foundational choice haunts you. It is the invisible weakness, the flaw hidden deep within the walls that no one will see until it is too late. The weight of centuries feels heavier than the weight of the state's gold. This aqueduct must not just serve this city, but it must also announce the permanence of Rome. You let the fragments of the landowner's stone fall from your hand, dusting your palms clean. The decision settles within you, solid and clear. A temporary saving is worthless if the work itself does not endure. Your reputation, and more importantly, the lives and prosperity of the people who will depend on this water, rests on the strength of every stone you lay. You turn away from the local magnate, whose smile has now tightened into a thin, displeased line. You meet the steady gaze of your foreman, seeing a flicker of respect in his eyes. We will source our stone from the Imperial quarry in the mountains, you state, your voice calm and firm. Send surveyors to plot the most efficient wagon route. Double the guards for the shipments. The landowner scoffs, making a quiet comment about the wastefulness of Rome's bureaucracy before turning on his heel and striding away. You know you have just made a powerful enemy, a man whose influence in this region could manifest as future obstacles, delays, and unfortunate accidents. The path ahead just became significantly more difficult. Your budget, once healthy, will now be under immense pressure from the very start, forcing you to account for every coin spent on wages, tools, and food. Yet, as your foreman gives a short, sharp nod and moves off to relay your orders, a sense of rightness settles over you. Later, when the first wagons arrive from the high quarry, the foreman brings you a sample. You take the piece of granite he offers. It feels cool and heavy in your palm, dense and unyielding. You strike it against another, and it gives off a sharp, ringing sound, a note of pure strength. There are no crumbling edges, no dusty residue. This is the stone of the empire, a material worthy of the task ahead. The cost will be great, and the political fallout with the governor is a storm you will have to weather. But holding this solid piece of the mountain, you feel a connection not just to the project, but to the very idea of Rome itself. It is a promise of permanence, a commitment to building something that will outlast not only you, but the memory of the greedy landowner and perhaps even the governor himself. It is a foundation built on integrity, not convenience.
You grip the cool, solid weight of the Imperial stone in your hand, feeling its unyielding strength. In that moment, you realize you are no longer simply a student following the lines on a map, but a builder laying a foundation meant to withstand the judgment of time itself. The governor's seal of approval on your chosen route feels less like a victory and more like the heavy weight of the first stone being placed upon your shoulders. His dismissal was polite, yet his eyes held the sharp, assessing glint of a man who does not tolerate failure. Following his instructions, you leave the town behind, your path taking you into the open countryside where the real work begins. The dry grasses crunch under your sandals, and you find yourself squinting against the bright reflection of the sky. Small lizards dart away from your approach, vanishing into cracks in the parched earth. This is where your aqueduct will be born, not on a map, but from the land itself. Consequently, your first task is the most fundamental, to find its bones. You stand in a field shimmering under the open sky, a potential quarry site belonging to a local magnate. You bend down, picking up a piece of the local rock. Rolling it between your thumb and forefinger, it breaks apart into a gritty powder, leaving a chalky residue on your skin. It feels soft, porous, and alarmingly light. You know instinctively that this stone is thirsty, that it would drink water and weaken over time. A short distance away, your new foreman watches you. A man whose life seems carved into the lines on his face and the scars across his knuckles. He is a former legionary, assigned to your project for his experience in managing large crews, and his silence is more telling than 1,000 words of warning could ever be. His gaze flicks from the crumbling rock in your hand to the approaching figure of the landowner. This landowner approaches with a smile that seems too wide for his face, his fine clothes a stark contrast to the dusty ground. He spreads his hands in a gesture of magnanimous welcome, though his eyes dart about as if counting every stone and calculating its worth. He offers you exclusive rights to this quarry, highlighting its proximity to your chosen route and the immense savings it represents. An army of workers could dig here for a year and not exhaust it, he says, his voice smooth and persuasive. Think of the coin you'll save the emperor. The governor will be most pleased with your efficiency. As he speaks, he avoids looking at the dusty pile of rubble at your feet, instead gesturing toward the vast, untouched hillside. While the landowner continues his practiced speech, your foreman takes a few steps closer. He doesn't interrupt, but he picks up a similar piece of stone and, with a single, powerful squeeze of his hand, reduces it to a puff of dust and pebbles. He wipes his hand clean on his leather tunic and meets your eyes. The gesture is small, almost imperceptible to the landowner, but it is a clear and damning verdict on the quality of the material. The foreman's quiet skepticism confirms the doubt coiling in your own gut. He has built fortifications from Gaul to Britannia, and his hands know the difference between stone that will endure for centuries and stone that will betray you in a single winter freeze. Your mind drifts back to your schooling in Rome, to the lectures of Vitruvius on architecture and materials. You can almost hear your tutor's voice explaining the secret of Rome's strength, opus caementicium, a special concrete. The tutor would always stress that this man-made rock was a miracle of engineering, but it was a miracle whose power depended entirely on the quality of its ingredients. A weak aggregate, he would say, tapping a diagram of a bridge, makes for a weak concrete. It is like building a legion with sick men. It may look impressive from a distance, but it will collapse under the first real pressure. This gritty sand and soft stone would be the aggregate for your aqueduct. You would be mixing your legacy with dust. The landowner, sensing your hesitation, presses his advantage. A quick decision saves weeks of delay, he insists, his smile tightening slightly at the edges. The Imperial quarries are a month's journey away, and their prices, Well, they charge as if their stone is solid gold. With the money you save here, you can hire more men, buy better tools, perhaps even finish ahead of schedule. A young engineer's reputation is built on such results. He even makes a small joke about having enough left over for the finest wine this province produces, a reward for your good sense. The offer is a golden apple, shiny and tempting, promising to solve a dozen future problems of budget and time before they even begin. However, the foreman's quiet presence beside you serves as a powerful anchor against the landowner's persuasive tide. He finally speaks, his voice low and raspy, like stones grinding together. "Sir," he says, addressing you with formal respect, "I have seen walls built with stone like this. They sweat in the damp and crumble in the frost. Good men will risk their lives on the scaffolding building your arches. Their lives are worth more than quick-setting mortar." He isn't making an engineering argument. He is making a moral one. He speaks of the human cost of poor materials, a perspective not found in your textbooks. His words remind you that you are not just building a channel for water, but a workplace, a structure that must protect the very men who give it form. The choice solidifies before you, stark and clear. On one side is the path of ease and political favor. Accepting the landowner's offer would fill your project's coffers, earning you a nod of approval from the governor and marking you as a pragmatic, efficient manager of state funds. It is the safe path for your young career. On the other side is the path of integrity. Insisting on stone from the distant Imperial quarry would strain your budget from the outset, invite questions and delays, and immediately mark you as difficult. Yet, it would guarantee the aqueduct you build would be worthy of the name Roman, a structure built to defy time itself. You find yourself torn between the immediate, practical needs of the budget and the timeless, unyielding demands of your craft. It feels like you are being asked to weigh a purse of gold against the weight of a mountain. To please the men who hold your career in their hands, or to honor the silent, invisible men of the future who will depend on your work. You look down at the weak, powdery stone one last time, then let the dust fall from your fingers. The decision is no longer a calculation of cost, but a declaration of purpose. This aqueduct will carry your name for the rest of your life, and likely long after. Turning away from the landowner's expectant face, you look directly at your foreman. The man's weathered expression is neutral, waiting. He has offered his counsel, but the command is yours alone to give. You see in his eyes not a challenge, but a silent hope that you will make the right choice, the builder's choice. The landowner's smile has finally evaporated, replaced by a thin, hard line. He knows he has lost the argument. The silence stretches, broken only by the chirping of insects in the dry grass. With a steady voice that carries more authority than you felt moments before, you give your order. Foreman, prepare 2 riders. They are to take the south road to the Marcian Imperial quarry. Give them this seal and a requisition for 10,000 cartloads of the best travertine they have. We will make camp here, but we will not break ground until the first shipment of real stone arrives. The words feel solid, like the very material you are ordering. They are expensive words, troublesome words, but they are the right ones. The landowner sputters a protest about the cost and the delay, but you pay him no mind. You have made your decision, and the consequences will come as they may. Your foreman, however, allows himself the barest hint of a smile. He simply nods, a gesture of profound respect and understanding, before turning to bellow for the stable master. In that single nod, you feel you have laid a far more important foundation than any cornerstone. You have earned the trust of the man who will help you turn your plans into reality.
As the landlord storms away, muttering about Roman arrogance and wasted coin, you walk to the edge of the field and look out along the path you traced on the map. It looks different now. It is no longer just a line representing a future plan. It has become a promise that what you build here will be strong, that it will last. The financial strain will be immense, and the governor will surely demand an explanation. But the weight of this first true choice, balancing the heft of a coin against the permanence of stone, has now set the very first course for your legacy. With the route chosen and the distant clang of quarry hammers now a part of the landscape's daily rhythm, the true work begins. The parchment map, once your entire world, now lies rolled in your tent. Your reality has become the earth itself, the uneven ground under your sandals, the thorny shrubs that catch at your tunic, and the long, winding path marked by wooden stakes that marches from the mountain foothills toward the thirsty town. You walk this line from sunrise to sunset, no longer a student of theory, but a master of the physical world. Your hands, once soft from handling scrolls, are becoming rough, calloused from gripping the tools of your new trade. Each step you take is a measure, each glance a calculation. This is where an aqueduct is truly born, not in an office in Rome, but out here, under an open sky, with the dirt of the province on your boots. To guide the water, you must first command an invisible force, the fall of the land. Your primary instrument for this task is a simple but precise tool called a korobates. It is a long, straight beam of wood carefully balanced on two legs with a narrow channel carved into its top. You and your men position it along the surveyed line, and you personally pour a little water into the channel. You crouch, your eyes level with the wood, watching the water's surface. If it touches both ends of the channel evenly, the beam is perfectly level. From this known truth, all else can be measured. The grain of the wood feels coarse beneath your fingertips, a familiar texture that connects you directly to the precision of your work. This simple device, more than any complex formula, feels like the heart of your engineering craft. The days fall into a steady, hypnotic pattern. You walk ahead, sighting the next position for the korobots. Your surveyors follow, hoisting the heavy beam and setting it down with practiced care. A low murmur of numbers passes between them as they adjust the legs, tapping wedges into the earth until you give a sharp nod, confirming it is level. A man then drives a stake into the ground, its height marked to show the exact grade. The thud of his mallet is a constant, rhythmic beat, punctuating the quiet of the countryside.
You move on, repeating the process 100, then 1,000 times. The work is slow, demanding a patience you are only now learning you possess. You find yourself listening to the cuckoo's call from a distant copse of trees. Its 2 notes, a simple song, marking the passage of another afternoon. As the sun climbs higher each day, you feel the warmth seep into your shoulders and find yourself seeking the brief moments of shade offered by a passing cloud. You pause often to drink from a leather water skin, the water tasting faintly of tannin and the earth. Dust kicked up by the surveyors coats your tongue and clings to your eyelashes, a constant reminder of the dry land you have promised to transform. This endless walking and measuring is not just labor. It is a conversation with the landscape. You learn its gentle rises, its sudden dips, and its stubborn, rocky resistances. You are no longer just looking at the land, you are reading it, understanding the story it tells of ancient upheavals and the slow, patient work of wind and rain. Now, with miles of the path marked, you must finalize the most critical calculation of all, the gradient of the water channel itself. This is the soul of the aqueduct, the unseen slope that will coax the water across the land. A mistake of a finger's width here could render miles of stone and labor useless. The water must flow, but it cannot rush. If the slope is too gentle, almost flat, the water will become lazy. It will slow, allowing silt and grime to settle, eventually choking the channel and turning your clean mountain spring into a stagnant ditch. This approach is safer, putting minimal strain on the arches and walls you will soon build, but it is inefficient and requires constant, costly maintenance. Your training in Rome, however, presents another option, one that speaks to your ambition, a steeper gradient. This would create a swift, powerful current, a river in a stone harness that would scour the channel clean, keeping it clear of debris and delivering a greater volume of water to the city more quickly. It is a bold, efficient solution, a testament to superior Roman engineering. Yet that very speed is also a danger. The immense pressure of fast-moving water would relentlessly test every joint and every arch. On the winding, difficult terrain of the northern route you selected, any bend in the channel would become a point of violent, destructive force, where the water would slam against the walls, seeking to escape. This choice feels like balancing a feather against a stone, a contest between speed and endurance. You retreat to your tent as evening cools the land, leaving the surveyors to their meal. By the flickering light of an oil lamp, you unroll a fresh sheet of papyrus. The complex calculations you learned in the city seem distant now. Their clean lines and perfect angles, a stark contrast to the rugged, unpredictable reality of the land. The terrain here does not conform to a textbook. The rocky gorge still looms in your mind, a future challenge that will demand the strongest possible structure. A high-pressure flow could be its undoing. Yet the governor's impatient scrutiny is an equally powerful force, and the idea of presenting him with a slow, silting aqueduct feels like a personal failure. You are torn between the engineer you were taught to be and the one this land requires you to become. The standard, accepted gradients are safe, but they feel like a compromise. A steeper, more aggressive slope is a gamble, but if it succeeds, it will be a masterpiece of efficiency. This single decision will define the character of the water itself. Will it be a placid servant or a powerful, barely tamed force of nature? The responsibility settles upon you, a weight far heavier than any stone your men will lift. Your legacy will not be just the structure, but the life that flows within it. You can hear the low conversations of the men outside, their lives and their labor all resting on the numbers you are about to commit to.
After hours of work, you rub your tired eyes and look at your final calculations. The lamp has burned low, and the camp outside has fallen silent. There is no one to consult, no older engineer to offer guidance. There is only you, the numbers on the papyrus, and your understanding of the land. You take a deep breath, the night air cool on your face, and make your choice. The next morning, you walk out to the line of stakes, your decision feeling solid and irreversible. You gather your foremen, and with a piece of chalk, you personally mark the final grade line on the first guidepost. This single chalk-drawn line is an act of immense faith. It is invisible to most, a simple mark on a piece of wood, yet it holds the power to command a river. From this moment forward, every stone will be laid, and every shovelful of earth will be moved in service to this one precise intention. You have not yet laid a single block of the aqueduct itself, but in drawing this line, you have touched the very essence of its creation. You have decreed the path and the pace of a force of nature, imposing an order that will last for centuries. You have shaped something far greater than yourself. The first cartloads of stone have begun to arrive, their heavy wooden wheels carving deep ruts into the earth alongside your chosen route. Whether it is the dense, reliable stone from the Imperial quarry or the cheaper, gritty local rock, its presence makes everything feel more real. The lines on your parchment map are slowly becoming a physical path, a scar of progress across the land. Now, with the raw materials being stockpiled, the most delicate and vital stage of the work begins. It is a task not of brute force, but of precision, for you must now determine the fall of the water itself. A single miscalculation here could render every stone laid, every coin spent, utterly worthless. This truth settles in your gut, a cold and heavy weight that has nothing to do with the morning chill.
To accomplish this, your days are spent walking. You walk for miles along the staked-out path, your legs aching with the constant, repetitive effort. Beside you, a team of surveyors carries the most important tool on the entire project, the carriage. This device is a testament to Roman ingenuity, a 20-foot-long beam of sturdy wood with legs at each end, and a channel carved into its top. This channel is filled with water, creating a massive, highly accurate level. Your men move with practiced care, setting it down every 100 paces, crouching to peer at the water's surface. They call out measurements, their voices a low and constant murmur against the backdrop of the wilderness. This process is slow, almost maddeningly so. But it is the only way to ensure the water will one day flow as you command. You run your hand along the rough grain of the chorobates, the wood warmed by the day's light. Dust kicked up by your sandals coats your tongue with a gritty film, and you find yourself constantly thirsty. On days when a breeze whispers down the valley, making the water in the trough tremble and lie, you direct your men to use the plumb lines instead. These are simple strings with lead weights, hanging at each end of the beam, which offer an undeniable verdict of what is truly level. You learn to trust the silent fall of these weights more than the shifting surface of the water, a small lesson in the battle between theory and the land's own stubborn reality. One of the surveyors, a man whose face is a roadmap of wrinkles, sometimes jokes that you are teaching the water how to walk downhill. The thought makes you smile, but the responsibility behind it sobers you quickly. Following this meticulous survey, you arrive at a long, straight section where the aqueduct channel will be cut directly into the side of a gently sloping hill. Here, the theory you learned in Rome must become unyielding law. Your instructors taught that the perfect gradient is a gentle one, a drop so slight the water moves without fury. This method puts minimal strain on the structure, preserving it for centuries. It is the safe, proven path that ensures longevity and stability. A gentle flow means less pressure hammering against the walls, and, more importantly, less chance of a catastrophic failure at any bend or junction further down the line. It is the choice of a careful, methodical engineer.
However, your foreman, the old legionary whose hands are thick with scars and experience, offers a different perspective. He points to the hillside, noting how winter rains turn the reddish soil into a thick, slow-moving sludge. He argues for a steeper gradient. A swifter current, he explains, will act like a broom, scouring the channel clean of the silt and debris that will inevitably wash into it. This approach would deliver more water to the city more quickly, a visible and impressive result. Yet this speed comes at a price. A faster flow is a more violent one, a relentless force that will test every joint and every stone, especially on the great bridge you must eventually build. The idea of unleashing such power feels both thrilling and deeply unsettling. You find yourself torn between the wisdom of the school and the wisdom of the field. One path promises safety and endurance, the other speed and efficiency. It feels like balancing a feather against a stone, trying to decide which has more true weight. You stand on the hillside, looking back at the miles you have walked and forward to the city that waits, thirsty, in the distance. The choice is not just about water pressure. It is a declaration of your philosophy as a builder. Do you build with caution to last an eternity, or with boldness to solve a problem with impressive force? You pull out a chalk marker, your knuckles white as you grip it. After a long moment of internal debate, you kneel down and mark the final grade line on a guide stone. You stand and step back, looking at the stark white line you have drawn. That single mark will be copied and repeated for miles, a simple instruction that seals the fate of the entire project. The foreman gives a short, sharp nod, his expression unreadable, and turns to relay the orders to the surveyors. The men begin their work with renewed purpose, their voices now calling out depths for the diggers, translating your single decision into a trench that will soon stretch toward the horizon. The sound of their work is the first consequence of your choice, a sound that seems to fill the entire valley. The choice is made, and there is no turning back. You watch the digging begin, the rhythmic scrape of shovels against the rocky soil becoming the new heartbeat of the construction. Every shovelful of dirt they remove is an affirmation of your command, a physical manifestation of the calculations in your mind. For a moment, you let yourself feel the profound sense of creation, of shaping the very earth to your will. The responsibility is immense, but beneath it, a powerful sense of purpose begins to grow. The precise angle of that chalk line, a simple mark on a rough stone, now lives in your mind as the foundation for everything to come. The work on the Great Gorge continues, a constant drain on your resources and a testament to the scale of your ambition. Whether it is the towering wooden scaffolding for the high bridge or the specialized workshops casting lead pipes for the siphon, every day brings a new demand for coin and materials. You wake each morning with the project's figures etched into your mind, balancing the cost of timber against the wages for 1,000 men. It is during one such morning, while reviewing surveyors' charts, that your foreman appears at the entrance of your tent. You look up, expecting a routine report, but the lines on his face are deeper than usual, his jaw set in a grim line. He doesn't wait for you to ask what is wrong. He simply states that the weekly grain shipment, the lifeblood of your entire workforce, is 3 days late. He explains the cause, his words clipped and precise. A runner arrived from downriver with news of a flash flood that has turned the main supply road into an impassable sea of mud. The wagons are stranded miles away, and it could be a week, perhaps more, before the road is clear. As he speaks, you feel a cold knot tighten in your stomach. You walk with him to the camp's granary, a long, low building that is usually a hub of activity. Now, an unnerving quiet hangs around it. Inside, the space feels cavernously empty. A few dozen sacks of grain are stacked against one wall, a pathetic remnant of what should be a mountain of provisions. The foreman gestures to them with a sweep of his scarred hand. 2 days' worth, he says, his voice low. If we cut rations in half, maybe 4. After that, nothing. The familiar, earthy scent of milled wheat is gone, replaced by the dry, dusty smell of empty barrels and bare stone floors. Leaving the granary, you see the effect of the news already rippling through the camp. The rhythmic clang of hammers on stone has lost its steady beat, faltering and becoming sporadic. Men move with less purpose, their shoulders slumped. Small groups gather, their conversations low and anxious. You see them glance toward you, their faces a mixture of hope and fear, looking for a solution you do not yet have. Your foreman walks beside you, his gaze sweeping over the men. Their energy is already low, he murmurs, his voice for your ears alone. Hunger makes a man weak. Desperation makes him dangerous. They built their trust in you when you settled that dispute between the crews. But an empty belly makes a man forget everything but his own need. His words are a stark reminder that your authority is not forged in iron, but earned daily through competence and provision. Right now, you are failing on the most basic level. There is only one immediate option. A local merchant, a man whose lands border your construction path,
is known to keep extensive storerooms. You send a messenger and, within the hour, ride to his villa, a modest but well-kept building surrounded by olive groves. He greets you with a smile that doesn't reach his eyes, offering you watered wine as you sit in the shade of his courtyard. He listens to your predicament with feigned sympathy, nodding slowly. When you finish, he leads you to his granaries. The sight makes your breath catch. They are overflowing. Sacks of wheat and barley are piled to the rafters, and the rich scent of abundance is a stark contrast to the dust of your own empty stores. He names his price. It is 4 times the standard rate, a figure so high it feels like a physical blow. You see the greed shining in his eyes. He knows you are trapped, and he intends to profit from your desperation. Returning to your camp, the weight of the decision presses down on you. The merchant's price is pure extortion. Paying it would cripple your contingency fund, the very purse you have guarded so carefully for the immense costs of the gorge crossing and for any other unforeseen problems. The strong Imperial stone you insisted on already strained your finances, and this would leave you with almost no margin for error. If a critical piece of lifting equipment breaks or a shipment of lead for the siphon is lost, you will have no funds to replace it. The entire project could stall, and it would be your failure alone. Your mind races through the numbers, the cold reality of your budget warring with the images of your men's tired, hungry faces. This is a choice between the long-term health of the aqueduct and the immediate survival of the men building it. The alternative is just as grim. You could refuse the merchant's price and impose strict rationing, stretching the remaining food for as long as possible. This would preserve your emergency fund, ensuring you have the resources to complete the structure itself. But the cost would be measured in human strength and loyalty. Men cannot raise heavy stones or mix concrete on half rations for long. Work would slow to a crawl. Sickness would spread more easily among the weakened workers. The goodwill you have carefully built could evaporate into resentment and anger. A riot is not unthinkable. Your centurion could suppress it, but a project built by resentful, starving men is built on foundations as weak as crumbling rock. The rumbling in your own stomach is a faint echo of the hunger that will soon grip your entire camp, a constant, nagging reminder of the vital importance of this moment. You stand for a long time outside your tent, looking out over the sprawling worksite. The sounds of labor have almost entirely ceased. Every eye, it seems, is on you. The centurion waits for an order. The foreman waits for a plan. The men wait for food. You feel the sharp edges of the choice before you, the cold, hard logic of the budget versus the raw human need of your workforce. One path risks the structure you are here to build. The other risks the very men who are building it. You find yourself torn between the engineer's prudence and the leader's duty. Finally, your decision settles, heavy and certain. You turn to your foreman, who has been waiting patiently a few paces away. You meet his gaze and give the order. sealing the fate of your budget and the immediate future of your men. He nods once, his expression unreadable, and strides away to carry out your command. You watch him go, feeling no sense of relief, only the immense burden of the consequence you have just set in motion. If you have chosen to pay, the coin purse of the state feels impossibly light, its absence a new source of constant worry that will haunt your every future decision. If you have chosen to ration, the quiet of the camp feels different now, not just weary, but sullen, a silence that seems to hold a threat. You look towards the distant mountains, the source of the water, and then to the town, its destination. The line of the aqueduct connecting them seems more fragile than ever before. You have solved the crisis of this day, but you know that the price, whatever it may be, is yet to be paid in full. This choice feels different from selecting a route on a map or calculating the grade of a channel. Those were problems of stone and water, of angles and stresses. This was a problem of people, of survival. It was a test not of your knowledge, but of your character. The silent gratitude or the simmering resentment of 1,000 men now rests squarely on your shoulders, a weight far heavier than any block of stone. You know this act of providing for them, or failing to, will define your leadership in their eyes more than any engineering marvel you could ever construct. The distant sound of a horn signals the end of the workday, a call that is met not with the usual tired cheers, but with a muted, watchful quiet that seems to fill the entire valley.
You retreat into your tent, the merchant's inflated price or the men's meager rations echoing in your thoughts. Unrolling a schematic of the gorge crossing, you try to lose yourself in the familiar comfort of lines and numbers, but the human element of your task now overshadows everything. The aqueduct is not just a structure of stone and concrete, it is a monument built with the sweat, loyalty, and strength of your workers. By feeding them or letting them go hungry, you have just made a critical repair or a critical crack in that living foundation. The thought settles deep within you, a piece of hard-won knowledge that no textbook in Rome could ever teach. You run a hand over the rough parchment, tracing the ambitious curve of an arch or the complex path of a pipe. Each line represents a future challenge, a potential point of failure that might require the very funds you have just spent or saved. It is a gamble, one of many you have made and will have to make again. As the light outside your tent begins to fade, casting long shadows across the valley, you feel the true weight of this command deep in your bones. It is the understanding that you are not just building a channel for water, but are also responsible for the river of lives that flows through this project, a current far more powerful and unpredictable than any mountain spring. The theoretical stage of your work is long past, buried under tons of excavated earth and stone. The valley, once quiet save for the cries of birds, now echoes with a new, constant rhythm. The sharp clang of hammer on chisel, the grating of saws on wood, and the low shouts of men guiding heavy carts. You are no longer just an engineer with maps and instruments. You have become the commander of a small army. From your position on a small rise, you watch hundreds of laborers moving with purpose along the path you chose, a living extension of your will. This vast undertaking now has a pulse, and you feel it in the soles of your sandals, a vibration of ceaseless activity that travels up from the ground itself. You find yourself wiping sweat from your brow, not just from the warmth, but from the sheer energy of it all. This rhythmic pulse of work, however, can be fragile. Your thoughts are broken by the sound of running feet on the dry path. A junior foreman hurries toward you, his breathing ragged and his face tight with concern. He gestures down the line where, instead of the steady motion of labor, a knot of men stands idle and tense. The productive sounds from that section have been replaced by a low, angry murmur that travels on the breeze. As you approach, the scene sharpens. Two of your largest work gangs have stopped, facing each other across a ditch half dug. On one side are the local men you hired, lean and hardened by a life in these hills. On the other are the slaves, leased from a nearby estate, their movements wary and their eyes holding a deep exhaustion. The air between them is still, but it feels as taut as a stretched rope. Your centurion overseer, a veteran of 3 campaigns in Germania, stands to the side, his arms crossed over his sculpted chest plate. His presence alone is a promise of violence. "They've been at it for an hour, sir," he says, his voice a low growl that cuts through the other sounds. The locals claim the slaves are deliberately slowing the work. The slaves claim they're given broken tools and the hardest ground. He points a thick finger toward 2 men, one from each group, who seem to be the focus of the argument. A public flogging for those 2 will remind everyone what discipline is. A dozen lashes each. It will get the rest of them back to work before the day is wasted. His solution is simple, swift, and brutal, the military way of solving problems. Every eye turns to you. The workers, both local and slave, watch you with a mixture of defiance and pleading. They are tired, dirty, and on the edge of open conflict. The centurion's gaze is hard as granite, expecting a quick confirmation of his recommendation, a judgment that reaffirms the simple chain of command. In this moment, you realize the formulas and principles you learned in Rome are useless. This problem cannot be solved with a level or a plumb line. A harsh response might shock the men back to their tasks, but fear is a brittle foundation for such a long project. It breathes resentment that can fester and rot morale from the inside. A lenient response, however, might be seen as weakness, an invitation for every future disagreement to halt the entire operation. You find yourself torn between the centurion's cold logic and a deeper instinct telling you that men are not stone blocks to be hammered into place. Your gaze falls on the tools lying abandoned in the dust. The shovels used by the local crew are tipped with iron, sturdy and effective. Near the slaves, you see several shovels with splintered wooden heads, their iron sheaths long gone. You recall a quirky historical account of a military engineer who argued that providing poor tools was the most expensive economy a commander could make, as it cost more in lost time and broken spirits than the price of good iron. It is a small detail, but it speaks volumes. The centurion sees insubordination. You see a problem of basic fairness and resources. This is not a question of engineering, but of leadership. You can rule with the iron fist the centurion offers, a method that is quick and requires no thought beyond the order itself. It would satisfy Roman authority and get the line moving again, at least for today. Or you can act as a diplomat, a judge. This path is slower and more complicated. It requires you to listen to grievances, to investigate the truth behind the accusations, and to create a solution that, while not pleasing everyone, is seen as just. Your choice now will not just solve this argument, it will define the kind of man you are to every single person whose sweat is building this aqueduct. Ignoring the centurion's expectant stare, you step between the two tense groups. The men fall silent as you approach. You do not shout. Instead, you walk over to the pile of discarded tools and pick up one of the broken wooden shovels, feeling its useless weight in your hands. Then you pick up one of the iron-tipped ones, its balance and strength obvious. Without looking at any specific person, you hold them both up. A tool has no master, you say, your voice calm but carrying in the sudden quiet. It serves the task, not the man. From this moment on, all tools will be returned to the foreman's shed at the end of each day. You turn to your stunned foreman. Tomorrow, you continue, you will issue tools based on the work to be done, not the crew assigned. And the crews themselves will be mixed. 10 locals and 10 slaves to a section, working side by side. A murmur runs through the crowd. The locals look annoyed at the change. The slaves surprised, even hopeful. The centurion's jaw tightens, a clear sign of his disapproval of your refusal to use force. You have not punished anyone. You have changed the system. It is a risk. You have asserted your authority not through violence, but through reason. And in doing so, you have challenged the centurion's worldview. As you walk away, the two groups do not immediately return to work. Instead, they begin to disperse, talking quietly amongst themselves. The immediate tension has been broken, replaced by a grudging uncertainty. The foreman gives you a short, sharp nod, a small sign of respect that feels more valuable than a chest of coin. The centurion remains silent, his expression unreadable, but you feel his eyes on your back. You have made your choice, and the consequences will ripple through the work camp for months to come. Your command has now woven you not just into the construction of a channel of stone, but into the fragile and complex lives of the men who build it. Summary. This part of the experience focused on a crisis of leadership, where you resolved a conflict between two groups of workers, local hires and slaves, by choosing a diplomatic solution over the centurion's advice for harsh punishment, thereby defining your leadership style. End state. You have averted an immediate brawl by reorganizing the work crews and the distribution of tools, earning the foreman's respect, but also creating unspoken tension with your military overseer. And the long-term effects on worker morale are yet to be seen. The peaceful rhythm of the work camp fades behind you, replaced by a low, constant whisper that grows into a deep sigh as you approach the ridge. Your foreman walks beside you, his usual confident stride
shortened by the uneven ground. Reaching the edge, you stop. The sigh is revealed as the sound of wind moving through an immense emptiness. Before you lies the gorge, the great wound in the earth you saw only as a line on a map. It is far deeper, far wider than the parchment could ever suggest. A dislodged pebble from your sandal skitters over the edge and vanishes into the chasm, its fall silent and seemingly endless. The wind pulls at your tunic, a steady pressure that feels like it wants to draw you into the void. This chasm is the direct result of the northern route you chose, a gamble for speed that now presents a challenge of pure stone and air. Your surveyors, brave men who lowered themselves on ropes, have finished their work. Back in the relative quiet of your command tent, 2 sets of plans are laid out on a heavy wooden table, weighted down with smooth river stones against the persistent breeze. The first drawing shows a structure of breathtaking ambition, a bridge. A series of magnificent arches, rising one upon the other, would soar across the chasm. It would be a testament to the power of Rome, a landmark visible for miles. Your heart swells just looking at the drawing. Such a bridge would make your name. But the foreman points to the long lists of materials and labor estimates beside it, his finger tracing a column of figures that makes your stomach tighten. It is a project of immense cost, time, and danger. The second plan is less a monument and more a clever trick. It shows an inverted siphon. This approach involves building a large holding tank on the cliff where you now stand, and a receiving tank on the other side at a slightly lower elevation. The two would be connected by massive lead pipes, running down the steep cliff face, across the gorge floor, and back up the other side. You recall your lessons on water pressure. The weight of the water in the descending pipe would force the stream up the other side, a hidden miracle of engineering. It would be faster to build and use far less stone, but the logistics of acquiring and sealing that much lead would be a nightmare of its own. A single faulty joint could bring catastrophic failure.
Standing at the precipice again, you look across the gap. You can almost see the ghosts of both options. The soaring arches of the bridge seem to form in the open air, a proud declaration of victory over nature. Then the image fades, and you picture the teams of men, ant-like and vulnerable, working on the high scaffolding, their lives dependent on every rope and timber. By contrast, the siphon is a quieter, more secretive solution. It feels less like a conquest and more like a careful negotiation with the landscape, using its own forces to achieve your goal. The choice reflects not just engineering, but philosophy. Do you impose your will upon the land with overwhelming force? Or do you bend its rules to your purpose? The pressure from the governor is an unspoken weight in your thoughts. A grand bridge would flatter his provincial pride and stand as a symbol of his prosperous rule. He would surely favor such a visible display of progress. Yet, if the construction faltered, if men were lost, or the budget spiraled out of control, that failure would be yours alone. The siphon is the safer path for your timeline and your treasury, which you must guard jealously for the long road ahead. You remember the strain on your finances from your choice of stone,
a decision that already committed you to a path of quality over savings. Can you afford another grand gesture? Your ambition wars with your caution, the dream of a lasting monument clashing with the practical need to simply get the water to the city. You turn to your foreman and chief architect, who wait silently for your verdict. Their faces are unreadable, professional masks that betray no preference. They will build whatever you command them to build. This is your decision, your responsibility. You are not just choosing a method of construction. You are choosing the challenge that will define the next year of your life and the lives of all the men under your command. One path leads to the sky, a visible legacy built on high arches and high risk. The other leads down into the earth, a hidden path of immense pressure and technical precision. You feel the grit of the cliff edge under your sandals, a tangible connection to the immense geological reality before you. The wind continues its ceaseless song, a sound that has filled this gorge for centuries before you arrived and will continue long after you are gone. You imagine the first trickle of water making its journey across this great divide, a lifeblood for the city waiting on the other side. That is the true goal, the reason you are here. The method is merely the means to that end. Finally, the internal debate subsides, leaving a single clear path forward in your mind. You take a final look across the chasm, the vast distance seeming just a little smaller now that you have a plan. You turn away from the edge, your back to the wind. "We will build the siphon," you state, your voice clear and steady. The architect nods, already making notes on his wax tablet. The foreman's expression shifts slightly, a flicker of what might be relief, or perhaps just acknowledgement of the immense task ahead. He simply says, "I will give the orders to the pipe casters and the masons." The decision is made. There is no turning back now. The choice commits you to a path of complex hydraulics and meticulous sealing, a battle of lead and pressure fought in the depths of the gorge, rather than a war of stone and gravity fought in the sky. As you walk back toward the sounds of the camp, you know you have chosen subtlety over spectacle, efficiency over glory. The shadow of this great undertaking will now stretch over every future choice, shaping your budget, your timeline, and the very nature of the trials to come. The path you chose on the governor's map weeks ago is no longer a simple line of ink on parchment. It has become a tangible reality of cleared earth and marker posts, a scar of progress leading directly to this spot. You stand at the edge of a great emptiness, a chasm that splits the world in two. A persistent wind rushes up from the unseen river below, pressing your tunic against your body and forcing you to plant your feet firmly on the rocky ground. This is the gorge, the primary reason the northern route was considered so difficult. Looking across the vast space to the far side, where the aqueduct's channel must continue, makes the back of your neck tingle. This is not a problem that can be solved with a shovel and a good crew. It is a question aimed directly at the heart of your Roman education. Your chief architect, a man whose hands are stained with charcoal from endless drawing, stands beside you. He holds two heavy scrolls, his knuckles white as he grips them against the wind's efforts to snatch them away.
They contain the two possible solutions, the culmination of weeks of surveying and calculation. He unrolls the first one, anchoring it with stones. It depicts a magnificent structure, a bridge of towering arches, stacked one upon the other, marching across the gorge in a display of perfect, confident geometry. It would be a landmark, a testament to the power of Rome, visible for miles. Your heart quickens at the sight. This is the kind of legacy an engineer dreams of leaving, a monument that will make your name, Marcus Valerius, spoken with reverence for centuries. He has to shout to be heard over the whistling wind. The arches provide the greatest stability if the foundations are deep enough, he explains, pointing to the detailed cross-sections showing footings sunk deep into the bedrock. This design is familiar, a proud tradition of Roman engineering. You have studied the plans for the great aqueducts that feed Rome itself. And this drawing feels like a page taken directly from those lessons. However, building such a thing would be a monumental undertaking, demanding a forest of timber for the scaffolding and an army of stonemasons working at perilous heights. The danger to the men would be constant. Furthermore, your choice to use the more expensive but reliable Imperial stone has already put a significant strain on your budget. And a project of this scale would consume every last coin, leaving nothing for emergencies. The architect rolls up the first scroll and, with some difficulty, unrolls the second. This drawing is less inspiring, more technical and strange. It shows two squat, heavily built stone tanks on either side of the gorge. Connecting them is not a bridge, but a series of thick, dark lines that plunge down one cliff face and climb the other, an inverted siphon. The concept is clever, using the weight of the water itself to push it up the other side. Lead pipes, the architect says, tapping the drawing, reinforced with stone and concrete collars. It will be much faster to build and far less costly than the bridge. You recall the debates among scholars in Rome about this very technique. Some see it as an elegant solution, while others mistrust the immense pressures involved, arguing that any flaw in the pipes could lead to a catastrophic burst.
The choice weighs on you, a physical pressure in your chest. The bridge is about glory and proven methods. It is a bold statement of power, but it is also a slow, expensive, and dangerous gamble. The siphon is about speed and efficiency. It is a hidden, functional solution that relies on complex principles of water pressure that still feel more like theory than established fact. Acquiring that much lead would also present its own challenge, requiring special shipments and skilled metal workers to cast and seal the pipes correctly. The morale of your men is high. The fair way you handled the dispute between the work gangs has forged them into a loyal and effective force. They would likely rise to the challenge of the bridge, but you would be asking them to risk their lives daily for your ambition. You find yourself torn between the engineer's desire for a grand monument and the pragmatist's need to deliver water to the city on time and within your means. One path leads to a structure that will awe future generations. The other leads to a clever, hidden system that solves the problem with ingenuity rather than brute force. You look from the ambitious arches on the first scroll to the functional lines of the second. The wind tugs at the corners of the parchment as if nature itself is impatient for your answer. The architect watches you, his expression unreadable, waiting for the command that will shape the next year of his life and the lives of hundreds of men. This single choice will define the project and your reputation more than any other. After a long silence, broken only by the sound of the wind moving through the gorge, you make your decision. It is not a choice made lightly, but one that balances the future integrity of your work against the immediate realities of your budget and timeline. You reach out and roll up one of the scrolls, the image of its design disappearing into a tight cylinder. You hand it back to the architect, a clear dismissal. The other scroll you hold on to. Its weight feels solid, definitive. You tap your finger on the design that will soon rise from this empty space. "We will build this one," you state, your voice firm and clear, carrying easily over the wind. Begin the preparations at once.
The architect nods, relief and focus replacing the tension in his face. He takes the chosen scroll and hurries off to give the first orders. You remain at the edge of the chasm for a few moments longer. The vastness before you no longer an obstacle, but a canvas. Surveyors are already moving down below, their bright tunics small dots of color against the gray rock as they begin to mark out the foundations. You watch them, and for the first time, you can truly see it. Not just the empty air, but the shape of things to come. A structure born from your mind that will soon impose a new order on this wild landscape. You have set a course from which there is no turning back. The decision feels like a keystone being lowered into place, locking everything that comes after it into a fixed and unalterable path. The whispers of ambition and caution in your mind have fallen silent, replaced by the hum of purpose. Turning away from the edge, you feel the ground solid beneath your feet again. The air no longer feels like a threat, but like a space waiting to be filled. You have become more than a surveyor of lines on a map. You are now the creator of something that will stand against the wind and the passage of time. Summary. This part of the experience centered on a major engineering decision at a large gorge, forcing a choice between building a grand, expensive arched bridge or a faster, more practical, but technologically risky inverted siphon, with the decision resting on factors like budget, time, and personal ambition. End state. You have made your definitive choice for crossing the gorge, and the initial preparations to build either the bridge or the siphon have just begun, setting the project on a new, unchangeable course. The northern route you chose on that first day has led you here, to the edge of the world. Standing on the precipice, you feel a current of air push up from the chasm below, making the hem of your tunic snap and flutter. Small stones dislodged by your sandals skitter over the edge and vanish into the immense silence of the drop. This is the gorge, no longer a faint line on a map, but a vast, unforgiving gap in the earth that must be crossed. It is a problem of sheer emptiness, a challenge that makes all your previous work seem like mere preparation. Your surveyors, roped together for safety, call out measurements from the opposing cliff, their voices thin and distant, carried away by the constant wind. Their meticulous work has been translated from numbers into drawings, which now lie weighted with stones upon a rough wooden table nearby. You walk over and place your hands on the edges of the heavy parchment. The smooth, dry surface, a stark contrast to the rugged landscape around you. Your architects have outlined two possible solutions, each a universe of effort unto itself. One drawing shows a series of soaring arches, a structure of immense grace and power. The other depicts a more subtle, almost hidden system of tanks and pipes. The men fall silent as you study the plans. They understand that the decision you make in the next few moments will define not just the aqueduct, but their lives for the next year or more. The first option, the bridge, speaks to the part of you that still remembers the grandeur of Rome. You can already picture it, towering piers of stone rising from the gorge floor, linked by perfect arches that leap across the void. It would be a monument, a declaration of Roman will stamped onto the landscape, visible for miles in every direction. Travelers would stop to marvel at it. Songs might be sung about its construction. It would be your legacy, a structure to make your family name echo for generations. Such an achievement would surely erase any doubts the governor holds about your youth and inexperience, replacing them with awe.
However, a vision of such scale carries an equally massive cost. Your careful accounting reminds you that the budget, already strained by your insistence on using superior stone from the Imperial quarries, would be stretched to its breaking point. Building the wooden scaffolding alone would be a dangerous and lengthy task, a complex web of timbers reaching up from the chasm floor, where one misstep could send a man plunging into the depths. This path promises glory, but it is paved with risk, coin, and the lives of the men whose trust you have only recently earned through careful diplomacy rather than harsh discipline. By contrast, the second drawing offers a solution of quiet genius, an inverted siphon. The plan shows two large holding tanks, one on each side of the gorge, connected by a series of thick lead pipes. These pipes would run down the cliff face, across the bottom of the gorge, and up the other side. Water, driven by the pressure from the higher tank, would be forced through the pipes and rise to the tank on the far side, completing its journey. It is an elegant, efficient solution, a victory of physics over brute force. To other engineers, this would be a far more impressive feat than a simple bridge, demonstrating a mastery of hydraulics, the subtle art of making water defy the land. This path, however, presents its own formidable challenges. The sheer quantity of lead required is staggering, and securing its supply would be a logistical nightmare, demanding a constant train of heavy carts from the nearest smelters. The pipes themselves would need to be perfectly cast and sealed, as any weakness could lead to a catastrophic burst under the immense water pressure at the bottom of the gorge. While it would be faster and likely safer for the workers than building a high bridge, a failure in the siphon would be insidious and difficult to repair, a hidden flaw buried deep within the earth. You find yourself torn between these two futures. The bridge is a public declaration of power. The siphon, a private testament to skill. One is a monument built for the eyes of the world, appealing to your ambition for recognition and fame. The other is an engineer's solution, elegant and practical, satisfying your deeper training and respect for efficiency. The choice feels heavier than any stone you have yet lifted, for it is not just about crossing a gorge, but about defining the very character of your great work and yourself as its creator. You think of the governor and his shrewd, watchful eyes. A grand bridge would be a physical symbol of the prosperity he is bringing to the region, something he could point to with pride. It would solidify his own legacy alongside yours. A faster, cheaper siphon, on the other hand, would deliver water to the city months ahead of schedule, a practical gift that the people would appreciate immediately. Appeasing his vanity or serving his citizens, you realize the choice is also a political one, a calculation of which outcome will better serve you and the project in the long run. Your gaze drifts from the drawings to your men. You see the foreman, his scarred hands resting on his hips, watching you with quiet confidence. Since you chose to hear his counsel and treat the workers fairly, their pace has quickened, their complaints have softened. To ask them now to risk their lives on treacherous scaffolding hundreds of feet in the air feels like a potential betrayal of that newfound trust. The casting and laying of lead pipes for the siphon is hard, hot work, but it is work done firmly on the ground. The safety of these men, you realize, must weigh as heavily as any column of stone or purse of coin. This realization settles the conflict within you. The ambition for a towering monument feels like a young man's dream, fleeting and born of ego. The delivery of water, the lifeblood of the city, is the true purpose of your commission. Your legacy will not be a single dramatic bridge, but the entire functioning line of the aqueduct, a promise fulfilled. Efficiency, safety, and speed are the virtues of a mature engineer, not just the raw display of power. You lift your hand, a decision finally formed, a path now clear. You trace your finger firmly along the second drawing, the one showing the two tanks and the deep, sagging line of the pipes. There is a faint scratching sound as your nail moves across the parchment, a small sound that seals a massive fate. Turning to your foreman and the centurion overseer, you give the order to begin preparations for the siphon. You see a flicker of surprise in the centurion's eyes, perhaps foregoing the more military-like grandeur of a bridge, but the foreman simply nods, his expression one of practical approval. As they turn to shout instructions, the quiet air of planning is broken by the sounds of action. Men begin moving with renewed purpose, their voices echoing across the open space as they organize tools and materials for a new, immense task. You stand for a moment longer, watching the empty gorge that will soon be alive with work. You carry the weight of this complex decision with you as the sounds of preparation begin to fill the vast emptiness of the chasm. The air feels different here, 5 miles from the town and high in the foothills where the mountains begin their climb. It moves with a crispness that makes your lungs feel cleaner, and the scent is of pine needles and damp stone, a welcome change from the dust and close living of the work camps. Before you stands the intake reservoir, a calm pool of shockingly clear water diverted from a mountain spring. From its edge, the aqueduct channel you have built stretches away, a pale, unwavering line of stone and concrete that disappears into the distant haze. This first completed segment is a monumental achievement, a testament to months of sweat, argument, and relentless calculation. Today, you will see if the theory of your maps and the labor of your men have created a conduit or merely a very long, very expensive stone trough.
Your foreman stands beside you, his gaze fixed on the heavy wooden sluice gate that holds the water back. He runs a hand over his jaw, the scraping sound loud in the expectant quiet. The men who built this section are gathered on the surrounding slopes, their conversations a low murmur that barely disturbs the peace. You see faces you recognize from the sickness, men who looked hollowed and gray just weeks ago, now standing straight and watching with a quiet intensity. They are all waiting for your signal. This moment is not just about engineering, it is about restoring faith. After the fevers, the shortages, and the endless back-breaking work, they need to see that it was all for something. They need to see the water move. You walk to the edge of the channel and peer inside. The floor is smooth, the walls are perfectly joined, and the mortar, a special mix containing dark volcanic ash called pozzolana, has set as hard as the stone itself. You recall your lessons on its unique properties, how it allows concrete to harden even when wet, making it the secret behind Rome's mightiest piers and breakwaters. Every joint, every curve, every slight, almost imperceptible drop in elevation was a decision you made. Your calculations from months ago, made with the long, water-filled leveling tool known as a chorobatus, are now set in stone. The debate among engineers about how our ancestors achieved such perfect grades with such simple tools is academic. You know firsthand, it comes down to patience, a good eye, and walking the same ground 1,000 times until you know its every dip and rise by heart. Raising your hand, you hold it there for a beat, letting the silence stretch. Then you chop it down. The foreman and 3 of his strongest men throw their weight against the great timber levers of the sluice gate. There is a groan of stressed wood, a loud crack as the seal breaks, and then the gate begins to rise. At first, only a dark tongue of water laps into the channel, a hesitant trickle that seems almost comical. A few men laugh nervously, but as the gate rises higher, the trickle becomes a surge, and the surge becomes a roar that echoes off the hills. A churning torrent of white water, the very lifeblood of the mountain, thunders into the aqueduct, and your creation is born. The sound is immense, a deep-throated rumble that you feel in your bones. Horses, tethered nearby, shy and pull at their reins. You and your foreman are already mounted, spurring your animals into a canter along the service path that runs beside the channel. You have to shout to be heard over the noise of the water. The initial wave rushes forward, a tumbling wall of liquid power. This is the moment of truth for your decision back in the planning tent. The steeper gradient you chose, the one that promised speed and a self-cleaning channel, is now on full display. The water is not flowing, it is racing. It moves faster than a man can run, a beautiful and terrifying sight. As you ride, you watch the water's behavior with an engineer's eye. It scours the channel floor, just as you predicted, carrying away the last of the construction dust and debris in its path. At the first gentle curve, you hold your breath. The water surges high against the outer wall, a powerful force pressing against your stonework. For a terrifying second, you imagine a cascade of spray, a breach, a failure. But the walls hold. The concrete, bound by the magic of the pozzolana ash, stands firm. Your foreman, riding beside you, lets out a whoop of triumph that is swallowed by the rushing sound. He grins, a rare, wide smile that transforms his usually grim face. He jokes that the water is moving faster than a legion on a forced march, and for once, you believe he is not exaggerating. Mile after mile, you follow the water's relentless advance. The landscape changes, the high mountain scrub giving way to oak forests, and then to open pasture land. Along the way, you pass the work gangs who are finishing other sections. They hear the roar before they see you. They drop their tools, climb the scaffolding, and line the banks to watch. As the head of the water charges past them, a great cheer goes up, a wave of human sound that follows you down the valley. Men throw their hats in the air. One young worker, overcome with joy, slides down the bank and lets the cold spray wash over him, laughing as his friends pull him back. This is their victory as much as yours, and seeing the pride on their faces fills you with a warmth that has nothing to do with the sun. You feel a profound shift inside you. The lines on the parchment map, the endless columns of numbers, the logistical nightmares of stone and grain and men, all of it feels distant now. This aqueduct is no longer an abstract concept. It is a living thing, a powerful man-made river with a purpose you have given it. You are not just an administrator of a state project, you are a creator. You have bent the will of the landscape and commanded the water to do your bidding. The weight of this realization is immense, a burden and a thrill all at once. You have brought something into the world that was not here before, something that will outlast you, that will serve generations you will never meet. Further down the line, where the channel is cut deep into a hillside, you slow your horse to a walk. Here, the power of the water is even more apparent. It moves with a contained fury, a constant pressure against the retaining walls. This is the risk you accepted with the steeper gradient. The structure will be under enormous strain for its entire life. Had you chosen the gentler slope, the flow would be calmer, safer, but slower. Silt would gather, requiring constant maintenance. Looking at the sheer speed of the water now, you know you made the right choice for this province. It is a bold statement, an aqueduct that works as hard as the men who built it. The 5-mile test section ends abruptly at a sturdy, temporary dam built just before the land falls away into the Great Gorge. The water crashes against the wooden barrier, churning and rising, its journey paused for now. The test is a complete success. The channel holds, the gradient is perfect, and the flow is strong and fast. You swing down from your horse, your legs stiff from the ride. The foreman dismounts beside you, clapping you on the shoulder with a hand as hard as fired brick. There is no need for words. You both simply stand there, watching the reservoir you've created fill behind the dam, the sound of the captured water, a constant roaring applause. Slow pace. You dip your hands into the flow, the water so cold it makes your knuckles ache. It is clean and clear, a world away from the brackish well water of the town. You bring a handful to your lips and drink. The taste is pure, like biting into a crisp apple, the taste of a mountain spring delivered miles from its source. This is what you have been working for. Not the glory, not the governor's praise, but this single, simple thing, a drink of clean water. It is a gift you are about to give an entire city, a gift that will wash away sickness, nourish gardens, and fill the grand baths that are the heart of Roman life. Looking back along the path you have just ridden, you can see the straight, unwavering line of your aqueduct cutting across the landscape. From this vantage point, it appears impossibly perfect, a mark of order and reason imposed upon the wildness of nature. Yet you know every foot of its length was a struggle, a compromise, a small war won with sweat and ingenuity. You think of the arguments with the landowner over stone, the conflict between the work gangs, the tremor that cracked your early work. Each challenge has been met and overcome, leaving its mark not just on the stone, but on you. You are not the same man who unrolled his maps on the governor's table. The foreman points back toward the high hills. "It will be a sight to see," he says, his voice rough with emotion, "when it crosses the gorge and makes its way to the city walls." He is right. The journey is far from over. The greatest challenges, the massive bridge over the gorge, the final approach to the city, the complex distribution tank known as the Castellum Aquae, still lie ahead. But today has provided more than just proof of your engineering. It has forged a new spirit in your men. They have seen the water flow. They believe. And with that belief, you feel certain you can ask anything of them. The weight of what you have created, this river of stone and will, settles deep into your bones, a foundation for all the work that is to come. The usual rhythm of the work camp is gone. You notice it the moment you step from your tent. The constant, reassuring clang of hammers on stone has been replaced by a quiet that feels unnatural and unsettling. Men who should be hauling timber or mixing mortar move with a slowness that speaks of more than simple fatigue. They pause often, not to wipe sweat from their brows, but to lean against a cart or a half-finished wall, their shoulders slumped. The energy that has driven this project forward, that powerful current of purpose you so carefully cultivated after settling the dispute between the work gangs, has dwindled to a stagnant pool. You see a group of laborers sharing a single water skin, their movements careful and measured, as if conserving every drop of their strength.
Your foreman finds you near the surveying posts, his heavy boots crunching on the dry ground. He is a man carved from hardship, his face a map of old campaigns and construction projects. But today, a new line of worry is etched between his brows. He doesn't waste time with greetings. "The grain shipment is 3 days late," he says, his voice a low gravel. A runner just arrived. The summer rains came early in the high valleys. A flash flood took out the lower road, washed the bridge away. It will be weeks, maybe longer, before the regular supply wagons can get through. He gestures with his chin toward the silent camp, a gesture that encompasses hundreds of men. "The reserves are gone. We have enough for tonight's meal, barely. Tomorrow, the pots will be empty." He lets the weight of his words settle. Because of the diplomatic way you handled the tensions between the local hires and the slaves, the men have given you their trust. But he knows, and you know, that loyalty cannot be eaten. "Their strength is failing, Marcus Valerius," he continues, using your name, which he rarely does. It adds a formal gravity to his warning. "You saw it yourself. They are good men, and they respect you for the fairness you showed them. But hungry men do not work. Their minds turn from their tasks to their empty stomachs. Soon, if nothing is done, they will simply walk away to find food, or they will take it. The unspoken threat of a riot, of your disciplined workforce dissolving into a desperate mob, hangs between you."
This new reality forces you to walk through the camp, to see the problem not as a report from a subordinate, but as a human crisis. The usual scent of wood smoke and cooking food is absent. Only the smell of dust and dry grass remains. Men sit in the slivers of shade cast by the supply tents, their conversation a low murmur, their eyes following you as you pass. They are not defiant, not yet, but a collective weariness has settled over them. A young legionary, barely old enough to grow a beard, is meticulously sharpening a spade with a whetstone. The rhythmic scrape of stone on metal, one of the few sounds of activity. The motion is pointless. The tool is already sharp, but it is something to do. You feel a hollow ache in your own gut, a sympathetic pang of hunger that makes their plight intensely personal and your responsibility absolute. Back in your tent, you unroll the project ledgers on your small wooden table. The columns of figures mock you with their cold logic. The vast undertaking at the gorge, whether you chose the grand bridge or the complex siphon, has been a constant drain on your funds. Every denarius, every silver coin is accounted for, allocated for wages, for timber, for the expensive lead pipes, for the lime that makes your concrete strong. Your emergency fund, the purse you set aside for unforeseen problems, seems pitifully small now. If you chose the higher quality Imperial stone at the start, that fund is already smaller than you'd like. If you opted for the cheaper local stone, you have more coin, but the memory of its gritty texture reminds you that you have already traded security for savings once before. The choice feels like it is closing in on you from all sides. Just as the last of your hope begins to fade, a scout you sent out returns,
his horse lathered and breathing hard. He speaks of a local landlord, a merchant whose farm is a few miles away, nestled in a small, fertile valley, untouched by the floods. The man's granaries, the scout reports, are full to bursting. He has grain, more than enough to feed your entire workforce for a month. A wave of relief washes over you, so potent it almost makes you dizzy. For a moment, the solution seems simple, a blessing from the gods. But then a colder, more practical thought follows. In a region suddenly cut off from its primary supply route, a man with a monopoly on food holds all the power. This is no blessing. It is a complication of a different and perhaps more dangerous kind. You meet the merchant in the cool, earthy dark of his largest stone granary. The scent of dry wheat, a smell of life and sustenance, is everywhere. He is a portly man, his tunic of a finer weave than any you have seen in this province, and his smile is wide but insincere. He shows you his stock with a sweeping gesture, the gesture of a king showing off his treasury. He knows precisely who you are and the desperation of your situation. He listens to your request with feigned sympathy, and then he names his price. The number he speaks is so high, so completely without shame, that it takes you a moment to process it. It is not a negotiation, it is a demand. He is asking for 4 times the grain's proper value, a sum that would not just empty your emergency fund, but consume a significant portion of your budget for the next phase of construction.
You feel a hot surge of anger, but you force it down. This is not a battlefield for honor, but a transaction for survival. The choice crystallizes before you, stark and unforgiving. You could pay his outrageous price. The thought of the grain carts rolling into your camp, of the cooking fires roaring back to life, is deeply appealing. It would be an instant solution. The men would be fed, their strength would return, and the work would continue. But your mind quickly races ahead, picturing the consequences. A budget so severely damaged would mean delays, compromises. It might mean not having enough lead for the city's water pipes, or having to use cheaper timber for the scaffolding on the final arches. You would be saving the project today only to cripple its completion tomorrow. On the other hand, you could refuse. You could walk away from this man's greed and preserve the state's money for its intended purpose. You could impose strict rationing, dividing what little food remains into smaller and smaller portions. This path would protect your budget, ensuring you could afford the materials the aqueduct requires. But you cannot ignore the human cost. You picture the faces of your men, the trust in their eyes, curdling into resentment as their hunger gnaws at them day after day. The work would grind to a halt. The quiet in the camp would fester, turning from weary listlessness into open hostility. You remember the foreman's warning: hungry men do not follow orders. This is not an engineering problem to be solved with a slide rule and a plumb line. It is a question of flesh and blood. The merchant watches you, his eyes gleaming, confident in your desperation. You can feel the weight of the coin purse at your belt, each piece of silver representing a block of stone, a day's wages, a measure of your authority. In this moment, you are weighing the future integrity of your aqueduct
against the immediate survival of the men building it. It feels like an impossible balance, a choice between two different kinds of failure. The rumbling in your own stomach returns, a simple, primal reminder that a plan, no matter how brilliant, cannot be executed by starving men. You look from the merchant's smug face to the open granary door, through which you can see the dusty road leading back to your camp. The decision is made not by the engineering you, but by the commander. You give the order to your guards to begin loading the carts and turn to face the merchant. As you watch your men haul the heavy sacks of grain, paid for with coin that was meant for stone and timber, a profound realization settles upon you. You have averted a crisis of hunger and rebellion, but you have traded it for a future crisis of resources. The immediate relief you feel is shadowed by a cold certainty that this decision will have consequences that ripple through the rest of the project. Seeing the men later that evening, their faces illuminated by the cooking fires as they eat their first full meal in days, you understand something fundamental. The lines you draw on maps and the arches you raise to the sky are supported by something far less tangible than stone. They are built on the strength and will of ordinary men, a foundation that requires its own kind of maintenance. You came here as an engineer of water systems, but you see now that you are also a tender of human lives, and that this responsibility is the heavier of the two. The winter's harshness has finally broken, replaced by the cool dampness of a spring morning. You stand before the main gate of the city, not as a newcomer with a scroll, but as the architect of a new age. Behind you, the Aqua Augusta snakes across the landscape, a monumental ribbon of stone and concrete that connects this thirsty town to the distant mountains. Its journey is complete, save for one final piece. The entire structure feels like an extension of your own body. You know every curve, every foundation, every channel, as intimately as you know the lines on your own hands. An expectant quiet settles over the gathered crowd, a silence filled with the scent of baking bread and blooming jasmine from the city's gardens, a world away from the dust and sweat of the work camps. Before you stands the ceremonial arch, the grand doorway through which the aqueduct will make its official entry into the city. It is decorated with carved laurels and boasts a prominent plaque of polished marble, though you have not yet read the inscription. The town council is present, dressed in their finest white togas, their faces a mixture of excitement and civic pride. Near them stands the governor. His posture is rigid, his expression unreadable. His public praise for your work has been correct and formal, but you have felt the chill of his disapproval ever since you politely declined his request for a private water line to his villa. His presence today is a political necessity, a performance for the people, and you both understand the roles you are to play. Your foreman catches your eye from the front of the crowd. He stands with the men, your crew, a diverse collection of local hires and leased slaves, who are no longer two warring factions. You see them talking and joking together, pointing out sections of the aqueduct visible in the distance that they themselves built. The memory of that near brawl feels like it belongs to another man's life. Your decision to listen and act as a diplomat rather than a disciplinarian
forged them into a single, effective team. Their loyalty, hard-won in moments of conflict and crisis, is the true foundation of this entire structure. Their cheers, when they come, will mean more to you than any official commendation. The time has come. 2 stout workers begin turning the wheels of a large wooden crane, its thick ropes groaning with tension. You step onto the timber platform, and with a lurch, you begin to rise. Below you, the faces of the crowd turn into a pale blur. From this height, you can see everything. You see the great bridge spanning the gorge in the distance, a testament to bold engineering that nearly broke your budget and your nerve. You see the long, straight channels you so carefully leveled, remembering the endless days spent with the korobates, a long trough of water used for precise leveling to get the gradient just right. Every challenge, every crisis, every sleepless night is laid out before you, captured in a single, triumphant line of stone. The platform comes to a halt, level with the top of the arch. Waiting on a scaffold nearby is the keystone, the final, wedge-shaped stone that will lock the entire arch together. This is the moment all of Roman architecture builds towards. Without this single stone, the 2 sides of the arch are just leaning piles of rock, waiting to collapse. With it, they become a single, immensely strong unit, capable of bearing incredible weight. A master mason guides it as the crane swings it over into the gap. You reach out, your hands finding their place on the cool, chiseled rock. You feel the familiar texture of the stone, the same stone you carefully selected so many months ago, remembering the landlord's cheap offer and your insistence on quality. That decision echoes here, in the solid, dependable feel of this final piece. With a deep breath, you guide the keystone into its final resting place. It slides into the gap with a soft, grinding sound that seems impossibly loud in the morning stillness. For a heartbeat, nothing happens. The entire arch seems to hold its breath with the crowd below. Then you feel a subtle shift as the forces of weight and gravity settle, locking together in perfect balance. The arch is complete. It holds. A single, unified roar erupts from the people below, a wave of sound that washes over you, filled with relief and joy. The sound is so powerful you feel it in your bones, a vibration that connects you to every person your work will now serve. As the platform is lowered, you keep your eyes on the people. Children are pointing, men are clapping each other on the back, and women are smiling with tears in their eyes. You see the baker, who will no longer have to ration his water. You see the bathhouse owner, whose business will now thrive. This is not just an engineering project. It is the delivery of a promise, the arrival of life itself. The governor steps forward as your feet touch the ground. He shakes your hand firmly, his face a mask of public enthusiasm. "A magnificent achievement, engineer," he says, his voice loud enough for the council to hear. "You have served Rome well." The words are for the crowd, but his eyes tell a different story, one of unforgotten slights. You barely hear him.
Your attention is on your foreman, who clasps your arm with a grip like iron and a grin that splits his weathered face. "We did it, sir," he says, his voice thick with emotion. Behind him, the workers raise their tools and their voices in a personal salute. Their cheer is rougher than the polite applause of the council, but it is genuine. It is the sound of shared hardship and ultimate victory. You look from their proud faces to the final arch, then back toward the distant mountains where this all began with a single spring. The water is waiting. This great stone vessel you have built is ready to receive it. This line of stone, stretching from a wild mountain to the heart of this city, has become the shape of your own life's work. You are jolted from a shallow sleep, not by a sound, but by a feeling. The hard-packed earth beneath your cot shifts, a deep and powerful shudder that seems to come from the very bones of the world. It is not violent, but it is absolute, a low rumble that you feel in your teeth and chest more than you hear with your ears. For a few long moments, the ground hums with a strange energy. And then, as suddenly as it began, it is still. The only sound is the frantic call of a night bird and the distant, nervous stamping of mules in their enclosure. This is a minor earth tremor, a common occurrence in this rugged province, a reminder that the land is not as solid as it appears. This reminder becomes much more personal when your centurion overseer appears at the flap of your tent just after dawn. His face, usually a mask of military discipline, is tight with concern. He reports that a patrol checking the line found something troubling on a newly completed section of the channel, several miles to the west. He does not use words like damage or failure, but the urgency in his voice is unmistakable. As you dress, pulling on your heavy leather boots, your mind immediately goes to the choices you have made, the countless calculations and compromises. Because of this report, a cold knot forms in your stomach, a feeling of dread that has nothing to do with the pre-dawn chill that makes you pull your cloak tighter around your shoulders. The journey to the site feels longer than it should. You ride alongside the centurion, your horse picking its way carefully over the uneven ground that your crews have churned into a messy track. Workers you pass stop their morning tasks, their eyes following you with a quiet, questioning curiosity. They felt the tremor too, and they know an unscheduled inspection by the chief engineer means trouble. Consequently, their silence feels heavier than any shouted complaint. You push your horse onward, the rhythmic creak of the saddle and the clink of the harness doing little to distract you from the growing fear that a single, crucial decision made months ago is about to be laid bare. When you arrive, the problem is immediately horribly clear. A long, jagged crack runs down the side of the aqueduct wall, a dark line against the pale mortar. It looks like a bolt of lightning was captured in the stone. You dismount and approach, the gritty dust of the construction site coating your tongue. As you get closer, you see it is far worse than a simple surface fracture. Small rivulets of water, remnants of a recent test, are seeping through the fissure, darkening the outer wall in damp, ugly patches. This is not a simple crack.
This is a wound. Your fingers trace the edge, and the memory of that cheap local stone comes rushing back. The way it crumbled between your fingers, feeling more like compressed sand than solid rock. The landowner's greedy smile, your foreman's quiet doubt, the heavy purse of coin you saved, it all culminates in this single failing line. You press your palm against the wall, feeling the damp chill of the seeping water and the rough, unstable texture of the failing concrete. Your training tells you exactly what is happening. The tremor did not create this weakness, it only exposed it. The poor quality of the aggregate, the crushed stone you approved to save the state's money, has failed to bind properly. Under the shutter of the earth, the material gave way along a seam that was always destined to break. The foreman arrives and stands beside you, his silence more damning than any accusation. He simply scrapes a loose piece of mortar from the crack with his thumb and lets it fall to dust on the ground. This simple action confirms your worst fears and makes the weight of your responsibility feel immense.
This situation leaves you standing at a crossroads, with two paths laid out before you, neither of them appealing. The engineer in you, the man trained in the schools of Rome, knows the proper procedure. You must report this immediately. A public announcement of the damage would alert the governor, allowing you to formally request an allocation of emergency funds and skilled masons to conduct a proper, lasting repair. It is the transparent, correct, and safe option for the aqueduct itself. However, it would also be a public admission of a catastrophic error in judgment, one that could shatter your reputation before your first project is even complete. Instead of that path, another, more treacherous one presents itself. You could attempt to handle the repair quietly. You have men and some resources, though your contingency funds are much lighter after paying the inflated price for grain some weeks ago. This would mean diverting your own crews, stretching your timeline, and placing an immense strain on an already tired workforce. The repair would be a patch, not a fundamental reconstruction, and you would carry the secret knowledge of this weakness for the rest of your career. It is a path of high risk, but it preserves your authority and shields you from the governor's merciless scrutiny. The choice feels like trying to balance your entire future on the edge of a knife. You imagine facing the governor, his polite words barely hiding his disappointment. He would see you not as the competent builder he hired, but as a manager of disasters, a source of problems and unexpected costs. Your career, so carefully planned, could be halted here, in this dusty province, by a single crack in a wall. The thought of that humiliation is a bitter taste in your mouth. He is a man who values results, not excuses, and this flaw in your work is a very large and very expensive excuse. To go to him now would be to hand him a weapon to be used against you, to mark you as an engineer who cuts corners and fails to anticipate the land's own treachery.
On the other hand, you look at the faces of your foremen and the senior legionaries, men who have followed your orders without question. To conceal this from them, To order a secret and likely inferior repair feels like a betrayal of the trust you have worked so hard to build. It would mean asking them to hide a flaw, to become complicit in your deception. They would do it, you know, out of discipline and duty. But their respect, a thing harder to build than any arch, might begin to crumble just like this faulty concrete. You find yourself torn between protecting your creation and protecting your career, and you are no longer certain which one matters more. The silence stretches on, broken only by the wind whistling over the top of the channel. The centurion waits for an order, his hand resting on the hilt of his sword. The foreman watches you, his expression unreadable, but his gaze steady. He has seen problems like this before, solved by commanders both wise and foolish. He is waiting to see which one you will be. You look away from them, back at the flawed wall, and then down the long, curving line of the aqueduct as it stretches toward the thirsty city. This is more than just stone and mortar. It is a promise. It is your promise. A decision settles within you, heavy and unavoidable. You will not give the governor an excuse to interfere or to brand you a failure. This problem is yours. You created it with your choice of stone, and you will solve it with your own hands and your own crew. Turning away from the wall, you meet the foreman's gaze. You choose to handle this quietly, to trust in the loyalty of your men and the strength of your own ingenuity to see you through. It is a gamble, a dangerous one, but it feels like the only way to maintain control over your own destiny and the fate of this great work.
You begin to issue orders, your voice low but firm. You lay out the plan for the quiet repair, detailing how you will divert a small, trusted crew from a less critical section. You explain how you will brace the wall from the inside before carefully cutting out the damaged section, piece by piece, to avoid a wider collapse. The materials will have to be sourced discreetly, paid for from what remains of your severely strained operating budget. The work will be done at night where possible, under the guise of routine reinforcement. As you speak, you see the foreman nod slowly, his practical mind already working through the logistics. The centurion, for his part, simply salutes. His duty not to question the plan, but to secure the site and ensure the orders are followed. As the first of your chosen crew arrives with hammers and chisels, the sound of their work begins, a careful, deliberate chipping away at your mistake. Each strike echoes the initial error, yet also represents the start of its correction. Watching them, you understand something profound about what you are doing. You are not simply building a channel for water. You are imposing a line of Roman certainty onto a landscape that refuses to be completely tamed. The earth will always shift and tremble, a quiet power moving far beneath the surface. You have tried to set something permanent onto a thing that is always in motion. As our journey ends for tonight, the dust from the day's labor has settled. The sound of the stonemason's chisel has faded, leaving only the quiet of the countryside. You, the engineer, can stand back and trace the perfect, gentle slope
of your work against the darkening sky. Each arch is a testament to careful measurement, each stone a monument to patience. The great structure's purpose is not in the stone itself, but in the promise of water, a steady and life-giving flow destined for a city far away. And now, let that same principle guide you. Just as the aqueduct finds its effortless descending path, allow your mind to follow a similar gradient toward rest. Release the day's calculations and the weight of the work. Let your thoughts quieten, flowing gently into the peaceful reservoir of sleep. Rest well. Your great work will wait for the dawn.